All right, we are going to get started in a very short bit. I'm just testing cameras and making sure that some of the media clips that I want to share today are actually going to work. And I'm pretty sure that that is ready to go. So here I am. Hi, I'm David Weintraub, the owner of Bodyworks DW, and this is the weekly podcast on rebooking for massage therapists. So let me scroll the music down here so it's not just like cut off. And hi. So today, last week we talked about the importance of determining your client's main goal for the session. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the next step in my process, which is to use postural analysis and body reading in order to help attach that main goal to some of the other areas of the body and help the client understand how all their different body parts interrelate. And for a lot of clients, they'll be really mystified as to why they're having pain in a certain area. They've been to doctors, they've gotten x-rays, they've gotten MRIs. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with their knee or their neck or their shoulder, and yet they're in chronic pain. Postural analysis can really help to show and design for them a way for them to understand how that may be interrelated to a totally different area of their body. Classically, if you've been in any of my live CEU classes, I always talk about the feet and the ankles, and I like to call ankle sprains as sort of the original sin. It's the first injury that many people have. And so I often start postural analysis with a front view of the client, just standing lightly in front of me and not making them try to stand correctly or just stand. I just want them to stand comfortably. And the very first thing I'll look at, and I'm about to pull in a clip talking about this, is the position of their feet. A neutral foot position would be feet under knees, under hips, really ankle joint, under knee joint, under hip joint, in a plumb line in gravity, so perfectly vertical line. Most people stand a little wider than that. Some people stand narrower than that. And then the next thing I'm going to look at is, are the feet pointed towards me, or is one foot turned out or the other foot turned out, or both? So let me pull up this clip and have it, which is from one of my classes that I taught, and you'll get to see a little bit of an action with a real client. All right, sorry, I'm just pulling up the clip now. This is the first time I'm using extra media in my podcast, so I'm still figuring this out. Okay, I don't know if that's playing live. It sort of doesn't look like it is, but hopefully that will bring itself in. I'm going to try it a different way. Let's do it this way. I'm going to pull in the view here and just talk a little bit about what's happening. Okay, so here I've got the client in a front view, and I'm looking at the position of their feet. And again, I am checking, and what I see on her is a very slight external rotation of the right foot. And what I'm seeing is that causes a slight torso lean to the left. Slight torso lean to her right, our left. And then a slight head tilt to go along with that. And you can sort of see I'm exaggerating it there. And I do like to actually mirror the client that way and exaggerate their posture so that they can see the subtle things I'm seeing in much easier detail. Okay, so let me pull the live cameras back. So that's part of the process, and it really only takes a few minutes with any client to do this. And when I have them standing in front of me, I want to make sure that I'm pointing out what I'm seeing in a subtle way. I don't want to judge things, but I just want to share. And sometimes you might have to soften a misalignment by sort of saying, like, look, we all have them. It's totally fine. It's a lot more subtle than what I'm pointing out. It might help them to process that, like, it's okay. And so I'll put them in that front view at first and just check, how is the alignment compared to the midline on the left and right? Is there asymmetry or leaning one way or the other? Is there rotation? The next thing I'll look at is the side view. sometimes I'll look at all 4 views, but at the minimum, I'll look at these 2 views, which is why I'm bringing them up today. So the side view looks a little bit like this, and I'm going to talk about where the plumb line should be landing and what joints should be aligned with it. Okay, so here I'm asking the client first to turn sideways, and you'll see her turn off camera in a little bit right that way. Okay, so now what we're looking for is that the major joints in the body all land on a plumb line. Now, if you haven't heard of a plumb line is the idea of hanging a weight in gravity such that the line of the string is equal to a perfectly vertical line. And so for your clients, what joints you're analyzing here are the ear, which roughly is in alignment with the AO joint, the axis occipital joint, the shoulder joint, the body of T1, the hip joint, the knee joint, and the ankle joint. And you can see with this client that not all of those joints really line up that way. And that will greatly help you to figure out different areas that need to be opened up. For instance, with that last client that we saw, she had a very noticeable anterior tilt of her pelvis, which means that her hip flexors are super tight, her lumbar muscles are super tight, and that there's this kind of accordion fold thing happening with her body up and down that plumb line. If you can open a few of those angles that are too steep and lightly open them that way, it will cause great relief all the way up and down the chain. Now, you can't just focus on one of those areas. You could just, with that client, work on her hip flexors, but that might leave her with a weird feeling in her back and the front of her neck. And so you really want to think about a few different joints above and below each other that you're opening up in sequence. So this is a little part of my process. It takes only a few minutes during an intake. You do want to point out the things that you're seeing gently, and then use those to relate the different things to a client. For instance, in that first client, she came in with obvious foot stuff. That was her main complaint. So looking at her feet made a whole lot of sense. But you might not think to look at the position of her head in relation to her feet. And you might do a lot of work to bring the feet into this great position neutrally, get the joints moving really well, get a lot of relief there. But if you don't deal with that head tilt compensation, eventually all of that stuff is going to come back down into the feet. Because if I just tilt my head, but I don't externally rotate something in relation to that, I'll fall that way. And so you want to think about how all of the parts need to be well aligned in gravity in order to provide the most relief for any one part. And that usually takes multiple sessions. And so this is also another way that you can talk about, like in the last video, we talked about the main goal. So I'll say to a client after the body reading, okay, this is how I see these things relating to your main goal. Today, we're going to work on getting your main goal to feel better. But we may need, in subsequent sessions, to work on some of these other misalignments that don't seem to be so related to you in order to get that relief that we got today to stick in a long way, in a long-term way. So that helps them process the idea of this isn't just going to go away with one session. It might feel better, but it won't stick around. But that with a series of sessions and subsequent follow-ups, there could be a pathway to them having long-term relief. And that hope that you generate in that intake the first time of an actual pathway that will hopefully, and in many clients, provide a long-term relief that doesn't need them to come all the time in order to feel better. That goal is super enticing for all of us, myself included. I don't want to feel like I have to come to my massage therapist or my acupuncturist or my chiropractor every week for the rest of my life in order to feel better. But if I know that in 5 to 8 sessions, I'm really going to have a different feeling in my body, and that these aches and pains that I'm dealing with on a daily basis are going to be either gone or noticeably improved, that makes it worth it. And for most of the clients that I'm dealing with, that is a key part of the retention process, is just to really get them to understand that it's possible and then what the expectations around that are. So hopefully this gave you some insight. And next week, we're going to talk about some more intake skills. We haven't even gotten to treatment skills yet, which is all coming down the line. But keep posted. And next week, we'll talk about the next skill. All right. Thank you so much. And I'm going to roll an end screen. And thank you again. See you soon.